Ever daydream about, like, I don't know, owning a whole apartment building?
Mm-hmm.
Or even just like a rental property,
Yeah.
bringing in some side cash?
Right.
Well, today, we're talking about how people use real estate to build some serious wealth.
Yeah. And we're not talking about like winning the lottery or anything like that
Right.
or inheriting a bunch of money. We're talking about leverage. So using other people's money to your advantage.
Exactly. And we have a great guide for this today. We're going to be looking at this article by this real estate mogul, M.D. White, and he breaks down 5 really effective strategies that anyone can use.
Yeah.
And you're in luck because uh, our expert speaker is here to help us connect the dots and help us really understand how these strategies work, why they work.
Yeah, what's so fascinating about these strategies is that they seem really complicated, but they're surprisingly accessible.
Right.
You don't have to be a millionaire to get started with any of these.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with something that feels a little bit familiar. Let's talk about residential rental properties.
Okay.
So imagine you find like a nice house or a duplex and you use an FHA loan, which is great because they have really low down payment requirements.
Exactly. And that's where that leverage comes in, right?
Yes.
You might only be putting down, say, 20% on a property.
Right.
But you control the whole thing.
Right.
And the best part, the rent that your tenants pay ideally covers most, if not all, of your monthly mortgage payment.
So you're just using the bank's money to buy an asset that's paying for itself.
Exactly.
And building equity.
Exactly.
At the same time.
Yep. And don't forget about appreciation.
Oh, right, right.
Even if you have like a small 3% annual increase on a property, that's going to add up so quickly, especially over, a 5-10 year period. You're not even just gaining 30% over 10 years. It's more like 34-35% because of the compounding.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's free money, essentially.
So you're making money even if you're just staying still.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've got our one rental property. Let's say we're ready to level up a little bit. What about multi-unit commercial properties?
Yeah.
So we're talking like apartment buildings, office spaces, things like that.
Yeah. Now we're getting into like the big leagues a little bit.
Right.
Now instead of having one tenant paying you rent, now you have multiple businesses potentially paying you rent every month, which means, a potentially more consistent cash flow.
I would imagine financing something like that's a lot more complicated though, right?
Yeah, it can be. It's not always as simple as just getting a traditional mortgage from a bank.
Right.
You might be dealing with, a mix of bank loans, what's called seller financing, where the person who is selling you the property also acts as the bank and lends you, a portion of that money to buy the property from them.
Wow. Okay.
It's more common than you think.
Interesting. So you've got this building, you've got the tenants paying rent, hopefully covering the loans, and then you're also building equity.
Yeah.
Is there anything different about commercial properties when it comes to appreciation?
Yeah. So commercial property values are very often tied to the economic growth of the area.
Right.
So if you have a business district that's thriving, that's going to attract more businesses to the area, which is going to drive up the demand for commercial real estate, for
Right.
office space, which means higher rents for you and ultimately a higher property value as well.
Location, location, location.
Exactly.
Okay, so for people who like to move a little bit faster, let's talk about the third one, which is fix and flip.
Yes. This is for people that don't mind getting their hands dirty, literally.
Right.
This is all about finding those hidden gem properties, the ones that need a little bit of TLC,
Right.
and transforming them into, market-ready beauties.
Yes, we've all seen the shows.
Exactly.
But I imagine financing these projects is a completely different story, right?
Yeah, so a lot of times fix and flippers will turn to what are called hard money loans, and these are essentially, short-term loans that have higher interest rates.
Right.
And they might seem scary at first, but they're designed specifically for these quick turnaround projects. So the goal is to get in and get out as quickly as possible.
Right.
To minimize the amount of interest that you're paying.
Got it. Got it. So you're going in, you're buying the fixer-upper, you're renovating it with a hard money loan, and then you're quickly selling it, hopefully for a profit. It sounds simple.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's like a million things that could go wrong.
Oh, absolutely. This
Yeah.
is not for the faint of heart. You need to know what you're doing. You need to understand the market. You need to understand renovation costs, realistic selling prices. If you miscalculate any of that, it can really eat into your profits and you could end up losing money.
Yeah, I can imagine. So fix and flip, that's not for me. I don't like that fast-paced stuff like that. It seems really scary to jump into a project knowing that the market could completely change.
Oh, yeah. And that's why it's so important to know your risk tolerance.
Right.
Right? Like real estate's one of those things that
Right.
it's a little bit more than just numbers on a page, you know?
Right. Right.
It's really your personality and what you're comfortable with.
Yeah. Some people really thrive in that fast-paced environment, and other people need things to be a little bit more predictable and
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And speaking of, let's talk about the fourth strategy, which is this BRRRR strategy,
Yeah.
which has this catchy acronym.
BRRRR. Yeah. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat.
Okay, walk me through it. So
Yeah.
we're using our properties and financing like ingredients in a recipe this time.
Exactly. Yeah. Instead of flour and sugar, we're using properties and mortgages.
Okay.
So picture this. You buy a property that needs some work, similar to the fix and flip.
Right.
Right. But instead of selling it right away,
Right.
you're going to give it that makeover and you're going to find some good tenants to put in there.
Right. Right.
So that it's producing income.
So far, so good. I understand this.
Right.
And then the refinance step, that's where it gets a little tricky.
So then once you've, got the property all fixed up, it's looking beautiful.
Right.
You've got good tenants in there. It's bringing in steady income.
Right.
Now you refinance, and what that means is because you've added value to the property,
Right.
you can potentially pull out some of that equity and cash.
So the property's paying you back for fixing it up.
Exactly.
Okay. And then you take that money and you buy a very fancy coffee maker.
You could. Or you could take that cash and you could buy another property.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the cycle repeats. Rehab, rent, refinance, repeat.
Oh, okay.
Right. So you can imagine how this snowballs over time. Where,
Yeah.
you start with 1,
Right.
you go to 2 to 4 to 8, and next thing
Right.
you know,
Wow.
you have a portfolio of rental properties
Okay.
that are all producing income.
So the refinancing thing, that sounds really intimidating, especially for somebody who's new at this.
It can be. It's really not as scary as it sounds. It's just basically, swapping out your old mortgage for a new one
Right.
and hopefully getting better terms because your property is worth more.
Right. Okay. Okay.
A good mortgage broker can be your best friend during that process.
So speaking of like, uh, you know, friends, like this BRRRR strategy, this is kind of like a portfolio expansion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That kind of brings us to our fifth point here, which is
Yeah.
portfolio expansion, which is less of like a standalone strategy and more of just kind of like the ultimate
Yeah.
goal, right?
Yeah. So you're either doing rentals or flips or this BRRRR method.
Right.
And the ultimate goal is to just have this big portfolio of different things, right?
It's to expand and diversify.
Right.
Diversification is so key, right? It's the old adage. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's the same with real estate. You
Yeah.
don't want all your properties in one area.
I wouldn't even put all my eggs in the same type of basket, if I'm being honest,
There you go.
now that I'm really thinking about it.
Exactly.
So you're saying different locations, different types of properties, that kind of thing.
All of it,
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe you have some residential, maybe you have some commercial, maybe you have some in different cities, different states.
Okay.
This is going to protect you from, market fluctuations in any one particular area.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And so once you have all these different properties, they're hopefully all giving you income.
Right.
And that's where, we're really talking about compounding returns, right?
100%, yeah. As your portfolio grows,
Yeah.
the potential for those returns to compound just grows exponentially, right? So it
Right.
creates that snowball effect.
This is a lot, and I feel like we've just scratched the surface. I feel like I need to go back and take notes on everything that you just said.
Right. And that's the thing. Real estate's it's not just about memorizing a bunch of strategies or,
Right.
whatever. It's really just about understanding the underlying principles.
Right. Okay. I'm a little overwhelmed, honestly, just thinking about all the different moving pieces of something like that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But I guess that's why they say it's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Exactly. It's a marathon. And just like a marathon, you don't just like lace up your shoes and start running. You need a plan. You need the right gear. You might even need like a running buddy
Right.
for support.
Okay, I like that analogy. So for somebody who's listening who is totally inspired to jump into this world of real estate investing, what would you say is like the most important takeaway from all of this?
If I had to pick one thing,
Yeah.
it's that knowledge is your most powerful asset.
Understanding these leverage strategies is great. That's a great first step.
Right.
But it's just the beginning, It's
Right.
really about, getting out there and
Right.
doing your research.
We're talking like doing research, understanding your local market, crunching numbers, knowing what you can afford, that kind of thing.
All of that, yeah. Don't underestimate the importance of experts.
Right.
A good realtor is worth their weight in gold.
Right.
A mortgage broker who understands,
Right.
your needs and can explain things to you clearly.
Right.
Even things like contractors.
Right.
If you're doing renovations,
Right. Right.
those relationships are so valuable. They can save you
Yeah.
so much time and money and headache in the long run.
It's like building your team, your real estate dream team.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
This has been incredible, and I feel like, again, we've just barely scratched the surface. I'm already feeling a little bit intimidated. For somebody who is listening who's feeling that way, like, I don't know where to begin. What advice would you give them?
It's normal to feel intimidated. Remember, every successful investor was a beginner at some point.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't have to go out and buy an apartment complex tomorrow.
Right.
Start small.
Okay, so, like, just looking at properties online, going to, like, a real estate meetup,
All of that. Yeah.
talking to a financial advisor.
Yeah, just take that first step, even if it's something small, it
Yeah.
gets the ball rolling and it creates momentum.
Right, and sometimes that's the hardest part, is just taking the first step.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, if somebody's listening and they can take away even just that,
Yeah.
I feel like we've done our jobs.
100%. And, who knows? Maybe one day we'll be hearing their real estate success story.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you learned something about using leverage to build wealth in real estate. Until next time.